friends. Welcome to the CUInsight Network. My name is Robbie Young. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Growth at CUInsight, and it's my job on this show to have conversations with thought leaders who support the credit union community. In this episode, we'll identify issues affecting credit unions and have discussions on best practices so that we can all gain a few nuggets we can learn from and improve our credit unions. My guest on today's show is Josh DeTar, Executive Vice President of Evangelism at Tyfone. Josh, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Robbie.
So to jump right in, one of my favorite questions. Most of us really didn't think we were going to work for credit unions when we grew up. What do you want to be when you grow up?
No, I totally, as a 4-year-old, was like, I'm going to grow up and work in technology for credit unions. No, I'm just kidding. My original career track was actually mechanical engineering. And I always thought I was going to work for an automotive company doing car design. And obviously that didn't quite pan out, although I still like to tinker with them on weekends. But no, what's funny is it was actually an introduction to a credit union, saving me from the financial perils of being a young, dumb 17-year-old that did actually kind of shape my, hey, I feel like that's an industry I could want to work in. So here we are today.
That's really interesting. I really need to start a running list of the amount of people who said they wanted to be an engineer, because there's quite a bit of them. It's engineer, and then we get a lot of astronaut and things like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely was not that cool or I guess exciting as a kid for astronaut, but that would have been a good answer.
I wanted to be a surgeon, so that's kind of a weird thing for a little kid to want to be too. But here we are. Look at us.
I mean, that is pretty cool. Surgeons are pretty awesome.
What was the journey like to get to your current role as Executive Vice President at Tyfone?
That's a great question, because I feel like it gives an opportunity for me to tell a story that I'm just very thankful of. I met Typhone's CEO, Siva, at an event. And about 5 minutes into talking to him, I said, man, I've got to work for you one day. And, it took about a year from then before I got the phone call that said, hey, were you serious? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And dropped everything and made the move over to Tyfone. And looking back on that decision almost 10 years ago now, I say that outside of marrying my wife, it's the best decision I've ever made. And a lot of it stems from, when I originally joined Tyfone, I had a very different kind of role, I guess, than I do now. But what was really special about Siva, our CEO, and Prabhakar, our co-founder and COO, is just the kind of culture that they have always strived to build at Tyfone is one where kind of titles don't matter. We run a really flat organization, and it's use your strengths that make you unique in a way that adds value. And then the cards will fall where they fall, kind of thing. And so I was just always given an opportunity to step in where I felt I could lend a hand and help and actually do the work. And ultimately that led to where I am today, which is then giving me the freedom to even make up my own title. So I guess, that's how you end up with a guy with a title like EVP of Evangelism, is when you let a creative person make up their own title. But I'd like to think that it's really fitting for me, because I am somebody who's really genuinely passionate about the credit union industry, kind of going back to, my story of being saved by a credit union myself. And ultimately, my role and my goal at Tyfone is to get our internal Typhoneers, as well as folks external to our organization, like yourself, like prospective customers, consultants, you name it, excited about what we do, but more importantly, why we do it the way that we do it. And that's just always been my passion. And so, Siva and Prabhakar gave me the opportunity to do that. And I'm very humbled for the ability to lead a team of really incredible, amazing people that get Typhone's brand and message out to the industry.
That's really interesting that you say that way, because As someone who's had the privilege to meet Siva as well, and we'll be sure to link to his episode in the show notes, you very much both are people that I would describe as extremely passionate. And the story of you saying, I want to work for him someday, and actually getting the phone call, having talked to him more than once, I am not surprised at all to hear that that's exactly how that went down. You definitely are both very passionate people. And you and I have engaged a lot in the industry even before you were partners with CUInsight. And that passion you talk about definitely is palpable, I will say.
Oh, I appreciate that. That means a lot because it's something it's really important to me personally, and it's important to us as an organization. I'm just one of those people that I can't do something unless I can really get behind it. I'll spare the French, but I don't want to do anything half booty. Like I want to go full in. And so, yeah, this is something that, yeah, it's work, but it doesn't really feel like it when you really enjoy what you do and believe in the impact that you're having.
Real recognizes real, Josh.
I love that.
So tell me more about Tyfone and kind of where you guys add value within the credit union space.
Yeah, I love the opportunity to tell that story. And one of the things that you probably already know about me, but as people interact with me, will hopefully figure out, I like to be pretty blunt and pretty transparent. So I'm going to tell you how I see this. Look, at our core, we're a digital banking provider. And on any given Tuesday, there's probably like 37 of us in the industry. So credit unions have a lot of options when it comes to digital banking partners. And at the end of the day, we're not going to be right for everyone. And we're kind of okay with that. But where we really see the ability to add value and differentiation is not so much in one specific feature that we built or one maybe thing that we do differently in our product. What I'm about to say leads to different features and innovative products, but it all kind of stems from really the heart of Tyfone. And I'd like to think that you can validate this by, what you said about mine and Siva's passion. We really believe that the heart of Tyfone is one of our greatest differentiators because it's a heart of service and it's a heart of collaboration. And so everything kind of starts from there. And at the end of the day, any software company worth their weight in salt can build features, right? Software is a pretty replicatable industry. We can build anything our competitors have built. And quite frankly, our competitors can build anything that we have built. So I very strongly believe that the question should not be, what features do you have? It should be, why do you have the features that you do? And even more importantly, why did you build them the way that you did? And for us, the answer to that question is always because we sat at the table with our customers. We broke bread with them. We understood how could we add unique and differentiating value to them and their ecosystem. And then we build features and products out of that. And so what that lends itself to is, you end up with, yes, a great digital banking solution that checkmarks all the boxes that you just have to have. But it also means that you are able to use configuration, third-party partnerships, and uniquely custom-built things for you that allow our credit unions kind of stand out and differentiate themselves. So for us, it really all comes back to more about creating value than just check marking boxes to say, oh, well, Capital One rolled out this feature, so we should probably roll out that feature the same exact way.
So I want to pull a thread of that a little bit further. In today's digital first world, many members want to self-serve, yet credit unions really pride themselves on relationship building. From your perspective at Tyfone, how can credit unions strike the right balance between offering convenient digital self-service and maintaining meaningful human connection?
Ooh, I love that question. I got some thoughts on that one. So I'll start with what's kind of funny to me is I work for a company that, well, let's just be honest, wants to sell digital banking. So you probably think that I would be one of the first people to tell you that nobody wants to go to branches anymore. Everything should be digital. Credit unions should focus on being solely digital. But I don't believe that. I don't know if I get to qualify as this too much anymore or for too much longer, but I'm still young at heart. I'd like to think I'm still, pretty hip and I'm tech savvy, but I still go into the branch.
We're hip. I confirm. I can confirm. I've pulled the audience.
I can confirm. Yeah. Everyone agrees conclusively. Thank you. But yeah, I still go into the branch. I still talk to my credit union. Why? Because there's certain times where a conversation needs to be had or a relationship is going to be a driving factor for the decisions that I and or the credit union make. So how do you balance both of those? In my humble opinion, it's about doing a couple of things in digital that furthers the relationship that you have both in digital and out of digital. So the first is that digital has got to absolutely crush it at the self-service side of things, right? There are a ton of very transactional things that happen in banking that even me, somebody who loves to talk to my credit union, that wants to go into my credit union, doesn't want to talk to my credit union for, right? Simple stuff. I want to move money, which, mind you, is the number one thing people want to do, right? They want to interact with and they want to move their money. So how do you offer the ability for me to interact with and move my money when, where, how I want to on my own terms? That's a really simple check mark the box that needs to be done and done very, very well, so that I don't have to call the credit union when I need to do something like that, right? When you get the basics of self-service really, really right, it increases kind of the value add of the conversations that you do end up having with people. But I'd like to argue that we need to take that even a little bit further. And an example of that is, we've talked a lot about in the industry kind of personalization in banking. And I'm going to touch on this point here in a second, because this is another part of, how do you create relationships in digital banking and outside of digital banking. But I think a lot of times when we talk about this idea of personalization, it revolves around marketing, communication, maybe, making sure I get personalized offers, making sure that when I log into digital banking, it's kind of personalized to how I want to use it, navigate it, etc. But I would argue that more important to that is kind of radical personalization and how I'm able to interact with and move my money. Because again, that's why I'm actually doing banking needs. I'm not doing banking needs because I want to play around with an interface and move widgets around because I like them more over here. I'm logging in because I need to interact with my money. So if all of a sudden I need to move a decent sized amount of money from one place to another place and I need to do it quickly, but I can't because I can't self-service, or maybe the tools even exist, but because it's not personalized to me, I'm not able to actually do that. That creates a barrier, right? And it kind of demonstrates to our members that we don't necessarily know and treat them digitally the same way we would physically, right? So just to give you a simple example, let's say I'm a medium to high net worth individual. I've got a decent amount of money in my checking and savings account. I'm also a longstanding member of the credit union, and I use a lot of products and services from them. They're even my, PFI. And I want to buy a classic car on the weekend. And I'm going to spend, say, $60,000 on that. And I have the money in my savings account. And I want to move that to my checking account, or even better yet, just straight to the person that's selling me the car. Now, if I were to go into a branch and walk up to Susie at the teller line that I know and have talked to tons of times, she would absolutely facilitate that for me very, very quickly and help make sure that nobody swooped in and bought that classic car for me before me, right? But what happens if I want to do that all self-service and digitally? And maybe I want to do an instant FedNow transfer to the recipient selling me that car for the money. Most credit unions won't let me do that because they, one, don't trust my digital identity to do that. and maybe don't even offer the mechanisms to make that money. My argument here is that if we allow the member to be able to do something like that and self-service, that feels really personalized. That feels very relational. And it means that yet again, I was able to self-service on something that quite frankly is fairly transactional. And so the next time maybe I need a loan product or I need to have a conversation about my financial health or future position, that opens me up to have a much more personalized conversation with my credit union, because I'm not just fighting the fires of day-to-day transactional elements, because my credit union got that really right for me. Now, the reason I wanted to park to the side, the other piece of that is I still do believe that the idea of kind of personalization and things like messaging and the ability to use systems in a way that meets my needs as a consumer, as a member, is also really important to kind of building that relationship and giving my credit union the ability to then speak to me on a one-to-one level, kind of proactively. So I think it's a combination of, getting self-service and the basics really, really light, taking that even a step further and really giving people radical personalization in their ability to access and interact with their money. And then being able to have both digital and physical, they're tied together, kind of relational one-to-one messages and conversations. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes total sense. So in your view, in relation to delivering real value in a digital world, what does meaningful value look like when most interactions are digital? And how can credit unions rethink the value proposition beyond just features and functionality?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I would just kind of expand a little bit more on my last response, in that I think there's a lot of things, Robbie, that are table stakes, right? And just like a credit union has lots of options in digital banking, I, as a consumer, have a lot of options for financial services, right? And so why would I be a member of ABC Credit Union as opposed to being a customer of Chase? Let's be honest. Chase is bigger, has better name recognition, has more locations, has invested more money in technology, probably offers more products and services. So why do I choose to do business with ABC Credit Union instead? Well, 9 times out of 10, it comes back to that connection to community and connection to kind of shared value assessment. And what I mean by that is kind of think about it like, I think I could probably put you in the same boat with me, Robbie. I follow your LinkedIn enough, but like, I'm a big fan of, there is a farm about 5 miles from my house that during this time of the year sells berries and fruits and corn, and the fall comes and we'll get squashes and things like that. I like to go there to buy my produce instead of the Safeway that's a lot closer. Why? Because I kind of align to the values of that farm and growing local, sustainable food, right? That I know where it came from and I know the quality of it. Credit unions are kind of the same way, right? Like, they're adding value to the community. And it's almost that shop local, shop small, know where your money's going and the impact that it's going to have feel that people have by doing business with a credit union as opposed to a big bank. I think for some people, not as many as should, but it's also that understanding they actually have ownership in the credit union, right? Like, that's the reason we have this whole share terminology from. You actually have shares in the credit union. You're an owner of the credit union, right? So I think there's a big element of the value that credit unions can add is just that even if we're doing our relationship primarily digital, right? We're still a big part of the community and the relationships that we create both around our institution and with our members like you. And I think that goes a lot further than just saying, oh, Chase rolled out sneak peek to see balance. We rolled out sneak peek to see balance too. Or heck, we beat Chase to rolling out sneak peek to see balance. I don't think that's needle movers, right? Now, I will argue that there are some things that technology can do that will actually be some needle movers, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that. But at the end of the day, as silly as it sounds, I think the warm and fuzzy stuff actually creates a lot more value than even just a feature or a slight discount on a rate percentage.
I will have to agree with you there. I also think we are probably a lot alike from following you on LinkedIn as well, and think we're both people that are pretty authentic and have found a lot of engagement and value in creating a different experience. So I can certainly understand, one, why we both fit pretty well in credit unions, but also why Tyfone really sees that as table stakes when it comes to what credit unions to bring to the table.
Yeah. Well, I think, just we as humans, like we crave a sense of community, like at our core in so many different ways. And it's why, we as humans are even very tribal about little things like, I don't know, take CrossFitters. Like there's a whole tribe around it, right? Because it creates community around that. And I think credit unions are very similar to that. And I absolutely believe that that's something that credit unions have built their name on and should continue to just double down on.
Agreed. So how do marketing, data insights, and local community engagement all really come together to help the credit unions both understand their strengths and then deepen those member relationships and in a digital context if needed?
It's really funny, Robbie. I was actually really, really excited. You sent me a couple of the questions to prepare for, and this was one of them, because literally just 2 weeks ago. So fun fact, I didn't actually mention this, but I said I was a 17-year-old that wasn't the most intelligent with my money, and I was saved by a credit union. Well, fast forward to today, I actually sit on the board of that very credit union. And at a recent board meeting, our CEO was giving kind of a report on just how they had really done a bunch of research on our membership base. Now, we are still a seg-based credit union, and they had done a bunch of research on just our membership, our segs, where we were seeing new member acquisition come from, where we were not seeing new member acquisition come from. And then they did a ton of research into, well, what types of people, are a part of those segs? What is important in those communities? Like, what are the types of things that they will do in a town square on a weekend there? And brought all of it together through both hard hitting like data and just going and talking to people, right? And just getting gut checks and bringing that all together to say, okay, cool. Like, how does our credit union do a great job of engaging in those elements of the community, and where can we get stronger? And they put together a bunch of different campaigns that were both digital based as well as just being a part of the community and the segs, and then tying it all together to like one nice cohesive way of just demonstrating, hey, we are your credit union for your community, for your seg. Here's how we know you. And here's how knowing you translates to how we serve you and add value to you. And Robbie, it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, I haven't seen him this lit up and excited in a while. And it was probably one of our longest board meetings in a while, because he was just telling us about story after story after story of new members signing up for the credit union, right? And that's the kind of stuff that we want to see. And so this was really kind of a reminder to me of just how important it is. We put so much focus, right, on checkmarking boxes. And, we have to do Google AdWords. We have to do all this digital stuff because people are digital. And yes, we do. Like, we have to check mark all the boxes. But we also have to think differently. because at the end of the day, Chase is doing that same stuff too. But I guarantee you, Chase's email campaign or billboard ad is not going to be talking about how we know your community, we know your seg, we know what value looks like to you, and we've tailored products and services and our mission to those things, right? And so it's really understanding who you are as a core. Like, what did your credit union start as? What was the journey that it took? Where is it today? And yeah, how do you uniquely add value to your members because you know them? And then how can we sing that from the rooftops, right? One of the things that I talk to credit union leaders about all the time as a fellow marketer is I think one of the most powerful things that credit unions have are their stories. And what I find really fascinating, and Robbie, this gets validated all the time when I talk to credit union folks, is they think it's a normal Tuesday, because it is, when they save a member's financial life like mine. When I told my story to our credit union later on, they were like, oh yeah, that was just a Tuesday. We were just, helping this guy, Josh, who was a member. That's just what we do. I was like, you don't understand. This changed my life's trajectory. But you don't understand just how big of an impact you have on me. So those stories are so incredibly important to tell, because to your community, it's not just every Tuesday. That's big stuff. And that shows how you being a part of your community, how you understanding your members and how to actually add value is actually adding value. And I think that really strengthens the position and the story that credit unions have to tell about how they're different than other financial solutions that consumers have.
And shortly after this web episode, we'll be calling up old Webster and changing the definition in the dictionary, because I think that was a true a mic drop answer there.
Oh, thank you.
So as we look to the future, what's Tyfone's focus on the road ahead?
Now you're giving me the chance to say how I think actually some really cool advancements in tech and features can actually provide some value. So there's a couple of kind of foundational things that we are focusing on that we think is going to radically shape the future of relevancy for credit unions and how technology can play a big role in that. So the first is kind of the really literally the core foundational element that we've got to start from, and it's security. And I know that doesn't sound too sexy, but here's why it is. You remember I was kind of talking about what happens if I want to buy that classic car on the weekend. Well, if I were to go into a branch when they were open and just tell my credit union, hey, I'm trying to, purchase this classic car. I need you to help me facilitate moving money to the seller, right? That would be no problem. We do that all the time, right? There's lots of different ways and mechanisms to do that. But what if I want to do it Saturday night at 10 p.m., right? And I guess apparently I want to meet this guy in a Walmart parking lot and buy his classic car off him. How can I actually facilitate that? Well, the biggest problem with why credit unions have not given members the ability to say, do an instant payment that's irreversible off hours when nobody's around to validate it or look at it is because we a lot of times give members the lowest common denominator within digital banking because we don't trust that they're actually who they say they are. Account takeover fraud is a huge problem in our industry. And so is it really Josh logging into digital banking and saying he wants to move that money to buy this classic car? Or is it Robbie pretending to be Josh so she can buy it? Right? If we're not 100% certain, yeah, highly likely. You're a very, shady character, obviously. But that's a problem, right? Like if I can't conclusively say, no, this really is Josh on the other end of this cell phone, then of course, right? And the other compounding issue is that a lot of how we treat security is probabilistic. Well, this is probably Josh. Well, this is probably normal behavior for him, or this is probably fraud. And a lot of times that's after the fact. Well, and things like ACH, yeah, we got 2 or 3 days to figure this thing out. Maybe we claw it back, right? In the world of instant payments, it's gone in 4 seconds and it's settled and it's done, right? So that no longer works. So Tyfone has taken a deterministic approach to security. And guess what? We solved the account takeover fraud problem. That changes everything, right? So now if I can conclusively say this is Josh who's logging in, now what it can offer Josh digitally is a radically different and more personalized to him, because I'm sure it's actually him, not Robbie pretending to be him. So that's the first starting point, because then it changes everything that I'm going to allow Josh to do in digital banking. And the next thing is instant payments, which is another huge focus for us. So much so that we actually put it into a CUSO called Payfinia. We wanted to democratize, instant payments and the ability for credit unions to leverage this as a difference maker and as a value add to their consumers, right? Or their members, sorry. So instant payments and the ability to actually move my money instantly does everything from helping to manage cash flow to just giving people more ways to interact with their money, like we've talked about thus far. So instant payments also has to have that foundation of security, because one, if we don't have security, then we're not going to allow people to do these things like move large dollar sums fast. But then if we don't have instant payments, then we don't have the tool to do it. So they kind of go hand in hand. The other is there is a big missed opportunity. I'm just going to be honest. In credit unions, in being able to provide specifically in the digital world, digital services for the next generation of our members, our youth, right? And this problem has been solved by fintechs. I'm not a fan of that, Robbie. I got 2 little kids, right? And today I manage all their finances because, they're 4 and 1.5, but they're going to start getting older. And I'm going to want them to be able to start interacting with their finances in a safe and controlled environment. I'm going to want them to understand what it's like to have a debit card. I'm going to want them to understand what it's like to take out a loan for things that they want versus need, right? But if that's being solved by fintechs, that's not putting them into the credit union ecosystem. I want my kids in a credit union ecosystem for all the reasons we've talked about thus far. I want them growing up with somebody in their corner, right? You look at Greenlight. Brilliant idea. We see a lot of credit unions signing up for it. Problem is, the deposits don't stay with you. You don't earn the interchange. And oh, by the way, when that kid turns 18, Greenlight is incentivized to push them to the sponsor bank, not become members of your credit union. Not cool, bro. So another big area of focus for us has been youth digital banking. Again, we wanted this to be something that was democratized. It was bigger than us. And it needs to be something that can live both in and out of our digital banking. So we created that as a CUSO as well. And then the last but not least big thing that we have been working on is really a focus on being the first AI native digital banking solution. We use AI in absolutely every facet of our business, from internal operational efficiencies to tools for our members to be able to understand the complexities of what they're able to do. Look, AI is the buzzword. I get it. Like if you go to any conference anymore, everybody has rebranded to whatever company name .ai because they think it's just going to sell more, right? It's the buzzword. Everybody's got to have it. But how are you actually putting it into use cases to, again, add value? So that's where we've really focused is what are the things that AI can do to help make us more efficient, better informed, and quite frankly, continue to strengthen the relationships that we have with our members and our communities and add value. So those are kind of the 4 big things that we think technology that I would argue we're leading the way with is going to be able to impact positively the value that credit unions bring to their members.
That's such important points there. And I will say that for anybody that doesn't know, I do think your son is taking an active part in learning about lending at this current moment, as he does lend you quite a few of his toys every time you travel.
He does. And we've got him on the quarter system. So he gets quarters for good behavior and quarters get taken away for bad behavior. And every time he gets a quarter, he gets to choose if it goes into a spend jar or a save jar. If he picks the save jar, we double it. If it goes into the spend jar, he gets one. We're currently trying to figure out how to work this a little bit more because little dude has decided he really, really wants a El Toro Loco, Monster Jam little Hot Wheels car. And he has figured out how many quarters that costs. So guess what he's doing, Robbie? Every quarter is going straight into the spend jar. So I got to figure that one out. But, we're working on it.
I like the way he's thinking. So to wrap up the show, I'd like to have some fun with some rapid fire questions to let our listeners get to know you better. The questions are rapid, but your answers certainly don't have to be. Do you think you're ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So who is someone in your life that is or was a great leader, and what makes them great?
Can I give two answers?
I'm not taking score, so you are welcome to. Yes.
All right. Okay. This might sound a little cheesy, but my first one is my wife. I owe so much of where I am in life and the man that I've become to that amazing woman. And the role she plays as a leader in our home and as the mother of our children. So she is someone that I just aspire to make proud every day. And that makes me a better version of me every day. So that's my first answer. And that probably sounds like a little bit of a cop-out answer. My second is also going to be a little bit of a cop-out answer, but it's just the truth of the matter. The second is Typhone's CEO, Siva. He's just arguably one of the most intelligent humans I've ever met in my life. And at the same time manages to be one of the most humble and has just always treated me with respect, given me a seat at the table, encouraged me, held me accountable, given me every opportunity to succeed and to fail, and has taught me so much about what it means to just be a good human in the professional world and how that translates to really every aspect of your life. And so, yeah, absolutely. I would be remiss if I didn't give him a shout out for all that he has done to lead our organization, to lead me as an employee of his, and I would say a friend of his, and just the impact that that's had on my life.
Well, the cop-out score on this guide is not measuring anything, so I think you're good in that place. And shout out to your wife. That's awesome. And I really like the way you frame that, because as a wife of a spouse as well, I definitely feel like a leader sometimes, and I guess I didn't look at it that way. And then knowing Siva, I know that that's the truth. So you're good on the cop-out side.
All right. Well validated. Thank you.
So if you're going to splurge on something, and you really want to treat yourself a bit, what's one thing you might invest in a bit? And as someone that has seen you at many conferences, I think if I would invest in something for you, it might be one of those giant water bottles, so you don't have to body build your gallon water jug around a conference.
I had never thought about that as one, but now I might be heading to Amazon after this call. Man, again, I feel like I'm going to give a really dorky answer, but I also feel like this is the stage of life that I'm in. And, with the two young kids, I'll give you the answer that actually kind of also drives my wife a little bit nuts when she asks what I want for Christmas or my birthday. But the number one thing I want to splurge on right now in life is just time with my kids. And really through shared experiences. So I guess if you're asking me to splurge and spend money, I want to take the kids to Disney. It's one of the things that I feel like they're still probably a little too young to have core memories on, but I sure as heck am going to have lifelong core memories on. So I would say it would be a trip with the family.
I think that's completely valid. And as someone who's likely in a decently close season of life as you, I get caught up in all the time. It's you're spoiling them. I'm but it's so much more fun for me than I think it even is for them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Disney. My wife and I were big Disney nerds. A fun fact, I proposed to her at Disneyland. we were big Disney nerds pre-kids, and we were the type that were like, we were fighting to be front of line for rope drop, and then we didn't leave until security kicked us out. And I used to think we had fun at Disney pre-kids. Man, it is 10 times more fun with the kids. Yes, it's a little bit more challenging. Don't get me wrong. But watching them have fun is way more fun than me having fun.
For sure. So what's one book that you think everyone should read?
Ooh, one of the books that I read this last year that had a big impact on me was a book called Hiring for Attitude. And the book really talks about how there's certain roles within your organization where actually hiring for attitude versus maybe the resume or the aptitude is actually more valuable. And gives some really specific examples of, like if you're hiring for, actually, like we were talking about, like a brain surgeon, right? I'm going to be totally honest. If I need brain surgery, I really couldn't care less what the attitude of the brain surgeon is. They could be the biggest jerk in the world. As long as they're the best brain surgeon in the world, like sign me up, right? But there's also certain roles within your organization where somebody may on paper and actually maybe in all practicality may not be as quote good or qualified as another candidate, but their attitude is amazing. And it brings up the entire level of the team or the organization or, the impact in the role that they have. And having that person versus somebody who's the best in the world at it, but just has a really poor attitude and brings everyone around them down, you're actually better off hiring for the person that has the positive attitude. So I just found it a really fascinating book that not only was a good book, but it gave me, I like things that give me like actionable insights I can actually do something with. So it absolutely changed how I do interviews and think about interviewing questions. It's just really insightful.
Awesome. We'll be sure to link to that in the show notes. So what is your best hack for creating balance and integration between your work life and your life? And if the answer to that is, I don't know yet, I understand as also an adult with 2 children.
I don't know. I might have an interesting and controversial answer to this question. I don't think I have one. And it's not because I think by a certain definition, I have a good or bad work-life balance. I think I just kind of made the decision that there's no such thing as work and life. There's just life. And
have you listened to one of my interviews before? Because I feel like this was my answer. Are you cheating?
Wait, really? No, but again, just following you, I would have assumed that this is actually really similar to, because sorry, we're going to go off on the little kumbaya trail here, but it's actually one of the things I've always respected about you is I used to be the kind of person that was like, LinkedIn is just professional, like all of this. And now I wholeheartedly disagree on that. And even to the point, I actually recently had ChatGPT analyze me and tell me everything it knew about me. And it pulled up a bunch of different stuff, including my LinkedIn. And one of the things that it called out was it said, and it probably one of the weirdest, proudest moments of me recently, but it said, you seem to be a very family-oriented person. Your wife and your son, Jack, and your daughter seem to make common appearances on your LinkedIn. And it was a reminder for me that there is no work life and non-work life. It's just all life. And I used to be the kind of people that it's like, your work is work and you leave it when you leave it. And you can't be friends with people at work. And now my work people are my personal friends. My personal friends are my work people. My family is a part of, Tyfone. I mean, you can ask any Typhoneer. They know about all of the things of my family. They probably had some of my wife's sourdough. Like, it's just life. And I think once I finally made that switch, it just makes it easier. Where I'm like, you know what? Sometimes it means like I'm taking a work call while we're quote unquote on vacation. But it also means that sometimes I bring my family into work things together and we get value for our family unit out of that too. And so it's just, I don't know. It's all one big blur. It's just life. And I don't think I'm perfect. I don't think it's perfect, but man, it's more than I could ever ask for. And I feel very, very blessed. So that's
that
a
is
long-winded answer.
One hot take that I am more than willing to get behind for sure. So sign Josh and Robbie up for there is no balance hot take. You just got to live your life.
Just live life. Yeah, it is. We only got one shot at this thing. So enjoy it, have fun, and just do it.
No one's keeping score.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, exactly. And what works for me and you may not work for somebody else. And that's fine.
Exactly. So we'll be sure to link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. My last question for you is, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
If you're going to give me one last shot at the mic before we close this out, I will use it to just give you a thank you. Thank you. And thank CUInsight for, one, the opportunity to be on this podcast, but even more so, just the value that you add to our industry and being one of my go-to sources for industry news and what's happening and keeping my finger on the pulse. And just a personal thank you to you, Robbie. Like I said, I would say if you're not already following Robbie on LinkedIn, do yourself a favor, start following her. It's just the kind of stuff that'll make you feel good in your day. And I appreciate and I respect that. So thank you. And thank you to CUInsight for this opportunity to be here today.
Well, thank you. And as I like to say, I'm not crying. There might just be something in both of my eyes. But thank you again, Josh, for being on the show. Stay well. And thanks to all of our listeners today for tuning in to the CUInsight Network. We will see you again next time.
Thanks, Robbie.